there. How are you, Pierre?
Good morning, Nico. I'm doing well, thank you. How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm doing good. I'm doing good. I'm doing good as well. It's nice seeing familiar faces joining the room again. Nice to see each and every one of you.
Yes, good morning. Nice to see you. And good to see our dear colleague and friend Rory on stage as well. How are you, Rory?
Hey, Pierre. Not bad, thank you. How's things with you? All good?
Yes, I can't complain.
I'm slowly. I've been very happy the last couple of days, obviously, with the result that happened last week. On Tuesday. So keeping it quite quiet. I won't mention much on this clubhouse. I promise.
Yeah, we have our hardcore betting going on here, me and Rory on the Euro Cup side of things, and so far I'm doing pretty well, I must say. But let's see.
I think you're €10 up.
Exactly. It's not exactly nosebleed levels, but we have it fun anyway.
We get to the quarterfinals. It makes the games interesting, doesn't it?
Right. Mikael, good morning. Today I am traveling to Sweden, and the last 2 weeks here in Malta, there's been a 40+ degree heat wave. So, I looked at the weather in Sweden and I was hoping maybe it's not going to be the same. And literally the next 10 days is scheduled for rain. So I'm looking forward to come back to normal Swedish weather. How is everything over there?
Congratulations, Pierre. I'm looking at the temperature right now in my car. It's 18.5 Celsius. So you have some amazing weather in your view, so to speak, to look forward.
Very good. It's by the standards that we have here, it's pretty much winter jacket weather that you are portraying here. But
exactly.
I'm excited nonetheless. Bogdan, good morning to you as well. How are you?
Good morning. I'm very fine. Hello, everyone. Well, the weather is quite nice outside, and happy to hear a little bit about what's happened. I've been absent last week, so looking forward to get some news from Nico.
Yeah, same here. It's been a pretty eventful week, let's say that, on the Malta front, that was triggered by this very clubhouse session last week, but we can get into that in a little bit. Okay, Karolina, how are you? Okay, Karolina.
Good morning, everyone. Happy to see you in our session. I'm in Poland. Beautiful weather here, 30 degrees and sunny for a couple of days in a row now. So really enjoying summer at home. And not the 45 degrees heat of Malta and not the 18 degrees of Sweden. So the perfect sweet spot.
Yeah, it was so hot that there was an electricity. The electricity went out the other day on half the island because some form of instrument couldn't handle the heat, so it killed basically electricity in the half the island. That's how bad it is here at the moment. And to put some context into this, on last Wednesday, it was the hottest day in Malta in the last 100 years, but then on Thursday, it was the hottest June day in Malta ever. And I think yesterday we broke the record again. So yeah, I don't know if that's a sign of trends that are shifting on a larger tropical scale. But
I think there are lockdowns even in the US because of extreme heat, and they've registered record temperature in Canada in a small town yesterday of 49 degrees. So it's definitely on a larger scale, and it's becoming problematic for many countries.
So say something about the global warming, those who are skeptical to it.
Exactly.
And I think Canada is going through the same thing at the moment as well. Lots of people are dying because of the extreme heat there. So good news. The UK doesn't seem to be having such a problem at the moment. So we'll still get wet rain.
On a lockdown matter, since I've touched on it, I'm hopeful that we're not going to get there, but I was told that the lockdown started in South Africa again yesterday, full-on military lockdown, 9 p.m. curfew. So it doesn't look great because you know how it escalates quickly from one country to another. So
Also, Indonesia shut down completely last night.
Yeah, it's I have this feeling like obviously us being an event company, I think a lot about how this is going to play out, because at the end of the day, the last restrictions that will be lifted will be on the large scale events, and I have this feeling that we'll see this like pulsing restrictions coming in and out from certain jurisdictions in the next couple of years, probably. I mean, if we are not at the stage now where society has opened up fully again, I don't think that the world is going to be opened up fully in the next couple of years, probably.
I'm not sure whether people are ready to handle more lockdowns. I know that Poland isn't. The lockdowns have not been obeyed by. Restaurants were open illegally all over big towns in Poland. And in UK, there was a freedom march of 1.5 million people fighting against lockdown because, there's many people that get furloughed. But for example, in Poland, there was no government assistance whatsoever to businesses that were shut for all this time. So I think people's patience is running low, and if we have to live with this for next couple of years, I think there's different strategy needed, because the lockdowns are just ruining people's lives.
Yeah, and that's fair enough. I don't think we'll see ourselves going into lockdowns per se, but the point is more on the large scale events. I think when we talk about like events for 10,000, 20,000, 30,000 people, that will be the last restrictions that will go. And so I think restaurants, bars, those type of things will open up and most likely stay open, with albeit with some form of restrictions. But when it comes to the large scale events, I think that's where we'll see kind of uncertainty, let's say, for potentially the next couple of years. And that's where like we as an event organizer, we have to adjust to that, right? It's like how can we plan an event in 1 year's time on a large scale when different jurisdictions in Europe is still having very strict restrictions on events as it stands, with not really any major plans to open up on a grander scale. It's also about like how do you infuse trust in the event as well when there's restrictions being enacted and going back and forth on a large scale. I think it's like for us as an organizer, we have to kind of adjust to this potentially being around for the next couple of years. It'll be very interesting to follow. I mean,
and especially if you think about where all the attendances actually come from, right? It's not just doing an event because, especially in our industry, people across all over Europe just come to one place. Fingers crossed, we will meet each other in Amsterdam. And then we will just see how politicians will react to people flying in from Poland, need to get into quarantine, etc. It's just madness.
It is madness, and in UK there is also quite a big movement now, because they've announced that if you're a senior executive from a company, you can leave your quarantine as long as your activities contribute toward the economy. But I mean, define contribution to economy. It's relative to each and everyone's context, right? So these rules, they just need to have more structure and be a bit more fair, because otherwise the small people start to feel like all the restrictions are on them, and then there's different classes of people according to the government.
yeah, exactly.
But there's also sort of a relevant thing regarding our topic here, and that's restrictions placed on iGaming due to the coronavirus that are being prolonged for God knows how long. And that's also an interesting matter, where politicians now seize the opportunity to put in restrictions that even sort of the people are not so happy about, so to speak. So stuff like that will continue as well in my.
Yeah, interesting to see how jurisdictions handles this differently. In the US, it's the opposite, right? It's like the government is taking this as an opportunity to increase tax revenue, right? By enacting and enabling online gambling. Whereas in Sweden, like you say, Michael, it's restrictions instead to protect the kind in their own argument is to protect the citizens from the online gambling. So there's two different ways that the governments are acting.
Yeah, and if I may add something, this is what Karolina mentioned just a few moments ago. In Poland, for instance, there are already plans. We are in the beginning of July, and there are already plans and the rumors from the government that they are planning lockdown on already in August. That we are going to face another wave of a COVID in late of August, so they already make some sort of a preparation without. This is, it's not backed by any data at all. It's just kind of a plans that we need to close the economy again, which will harm all the people. I mean, we have been closed for so long time, and they based on basically some own predictions, are planning to close the economy again. So it's pretty much free market and do whatever you want among the governments and the countries for their own benefit. It starts to look like it's pretty much chaotic everywhere.
And
I think
just
yeah, go ahead, Nico.
and just to pick up what Mikael just talked about, especially if you have a look at Australia. So the governments in New South Wales, Queensland, and Western Australia, they already pushed land-based casino operators to actually close doors again, right? So this is something, just to underline what Mikael just already highlighted.
I wanted to just add another context, which potentially will be also visible in our industry, is how companies are handling the sort of return to work situation, because it became apparent that there's very different approaches from the big players in the employment scene. Some companies are asking employees to come back to work fully because they realize that productivity went down, and that just results in wave on resignations from companies that usually didn't experience it. Some companies are going for hybrid and just taking the bullet for maybe less productivity if they experience. And there's a lot of companies that really developed. I read yesterday that a company called Dell, which is a sort of remote entity hiring software, they gained the unicorn status during the pandemic because the interest in sort of remote hiring became so high that they received 150 million investment to grow, and a lot of companies like that gained momentum during the pandemic because more and more people are looking at remote hiring and remote entities.
Yeah, same with Hopin, the digital event platform that we are using for iGaming Next. It grew to become a £4 billion company without a head office during the pandemic, completely remote as well. Quite interesting. So Karolina, what do you think? I mean, there's like big news that Apple, for example, are not adopting this fully hybrid model or not fully remote solution, and they basically want their employees to come in 2 or 3 times a week, I think, after the pandemic. They have been criticized, for not being the kind of forward-thinking company that they are set out themselves to be. At the same time, they have just invested an enormous amount of money into building their spaceship office. So you would assume that they actually want people to be there. Well, what do you think, Karolina? What do you make of Apple's move?
Well, I'm sure there's some, finance and economy-driven decisions that they're taking, but I think you can't just undo the behavioral change that has happened to people, and I think it should be left to everyone's choice, especially at the time where a lot of people are still scared, and not everyone had full vaccination courses, and some people maybe can't have them because of various things, and just to expect them to drop this year and be back at work, and in general just drop the new reality that they were forced sort of to get accustomed to is not fair on people. So I believe that hybrid approach and remote approach is the best, and let people choose what suits them best, and you have to trust in your employees. I mean, if the productivity goes down, it is your role as an organization to put forward the right coaching and empowerment so that the productivity doesn't go down. So my view is fully on hybrid and remote.
Yeah, I totally agree. This is a topic really close to my heart. We've been fully remote for since the start. And yesterday, for anybody interested, GitLab. I don't know if you know the company. It's a source code repository company. They're very large. They're a unicorn, and they've been there at the forefront of remote work. And yesterday there was a conference, an online conference on Hopin, where a lot of very interesting speakers spoke. So it's really worth tuning in. There's videos on gitlab.com. You find it there. There's a lot of viewpoints as well. And I think we are heading in a little bit of a disaster if hybrid is done unmanaged, if hybrid is just office culture and remote culture in the same company, because that's not going to work. They are unique cultures, they work differently. And I think it's not just what I think, it's basically the common knowledge now in the remote work sort of scene is it's not about working remote, it's more about how you work. And the buzzword or the keyword at the moment is async, that you work asynchronously, so no or less chats, instant messages, less video calls, but more documentation, more sort of work which you can do at your own time, basically, rather than trying to replicate an office culture in a remote environment. So a lot of companies who are not careful about this will very quickly, and I've experienced this before actually in my previous company where we had part of the company was remote and part of the company was in an office. You have completely diverging cultures, and that clashes hard basically. That's going to be the big challenge for a lot of companies who are just using hybrid as a buzzword and just not really fully understanding what it means to work remote and how it's basically a different kind of work culture these days.
And I think there's another risk in it, maybe not for the companies that are just letting their existing employees in their existing locations be remote, but companies jumping on this opportunity of hiring in different jurisdictions and opening up for talent from different countries. I spent the last 3-4 days researching all sort of employer of record type of companies, including the new ones that popped up with great software and so on. And the risk of misclassification people from contractors versus employees when you don't have the intricate legal knowledge of the jurisdiction is really high, because there's a lot of countries like UK, like Spain, where the governments are really hot and they've stepped up the pressure on sort of not pretending that your employees are contractors just so you can save up on taxes. So I think this is also something that people need to consider when adopting this remote and multi-jurisdiction hiring strategy, because it isn't that straightforward and it can expose companies to a lot of risk, especially the small and less experienced one without sort of legal departments and HR departments that can handle it for them. I know that for me, it's a big matter. I want to make sure that we do everything by the book, and there's a lot of rules that I've not been aware of about hiring in different jurisdictions.
Very interesting, Karolina. That you talked about. It's on, let me just check, it's on GitLab. I think it's on learn.gitlab.com. Let me just check. No, that's not it. gitlab.com. gitlab.com resources. I'm not finding it right now, but yeah, take a moment.
Yeah,
take a moment, and yeah. Great. Before we jump in to Nico, I want to say good morning to Peter Paul as well, all the way from Netherlands. Joining us. How are you, Peter Paul, this morning?
Good morning, everyone. I'm fine, thanks. It's good to be here again. I was just wondering about the big problems that were spoken of. What kind of problems did arise with companies that are basically leaning on two models? I was really interested to hear about those problems.
So, Robert, do you want to fill in here?
I was searching for the GitLab thing at the same time. Sorry, can you repeat that question again?
Yeah, you spoke of the problems at your previous company that they had with a mixed remote.
Yeah. It's I think when the problem exists when you are in an office, you're 10 people in an office, you lean into certain natural behaviors. You have a person next to you, you tap on the shoulder, you go over there. and you have a quick conversation. That's also what a lot of people are missing from the office, of course. Yeah. And what happens naturally, that this conversation carries on, and then might be 5 minutes, might be half an hour, and then what happens after that? If it's an office-only culture, typically, we're just humans. We want to claim, we document everything, and we want to put policies out that documentation is required and so on. But you then end up not like very few things, only the tip of the iceberg basically gets documented. So that conversation is basically, let's say, lost in two people's brains. And and this is a sort of an office snowball effect, which is very, very normal, happens all the time. That next time somebody is onboarded, how does onboarding happen? There isn't a handbook, of course, typically. There is, well, let's talk to this person, let's talk to this person, let's schedule a meeting, maybe look at some old reports. So you lean into sort of the behaviors of what humans do in a room, basically. And when you work remote, you have to put a lot of effort to schedule a meeting. So the incentive for scheduling a meeting becomes less. You just want to get work done, basically. And what works best in remote is to focus on a sort of some companies go very extreme, like GitLab, for instance. They call it handbook first. Like you notice from software development, perhaps we have something called test-driven development, where you write a test first before you actually write the software code, and that forces you to document automatically, because the test is part of the documentation. And a very similar principle is the handbook first principle, where you say, all right, there's a certain way, or there's a new project, there's a certain way of working, there's an HR policy, there is anything really, like, I don't know, how to use Clubhouse as an employee, let's say, for instance. You go into the handbook first, you document it first, and then you lead the discussion after. So everything becomes highly documented and very, very async. So it's not very quick, basically, during the day. But what we have seen as a company, we are a lot faster at the end of the month. We are slower during the day, but we're a lot faster at the end of the month, because everything is on a record. Everything is focused on typed conversations, and everything is very calm. I really like it. So I can wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning and be a productive and inclusive member of the team at 3 o'clock in the morning. But in an office, you're only a productive and inclusive member when you're there 9 to 5, when it's all about the synced time being in the office. And when you have these two, and the point being is, it happens naturally to a degree. You don't need to force remote work to be a certain way. It just becomes too obvious that documentation is very necessary, and you don't have to force a certain culture in an office. It's just too obvious that people just talk to each other. But when you have these two diverging cultures in the same company, you have tension. For instance, small examples, but they are important, is that the other team which worked remote compared to the team which worked in the office, which I experienced, had conspiracy thoughts. Felt like we were, thinking about, I don't know, how to abolish remote work or something, because we were just not as communicative in the digital sort of space, or in the digital Slack, or wherever, what we had back then, because we were talking all the time in the office. And on the other hand, because we never saw colleagues, some colleagues didn't type a lot, basically in Slack. We felt they didn't work. So you have this huge problem. There is the CEO of In-Nazzjon gave a big interview like 2-3 years ago, and he mentioned they were choosing an all remote setup, and that still ring a bell. That the why still ring a bell with me a lot is, you have to provide a level playing field. And you can do that in hybrid, but it's probably the toughest setup to do. You can do a level playing field easily in an office culture. You can do a level playing field easily in I'm saying easily, it's still hard, but it's easy enough in an all remote company. But to provide a level playing field across employees in a hybrid environment is really a large challenge.
Super
I
interesting.
think this is
Thanks for
where
that.
also the popularity of psychometric testing when hiring comes into place, because it's one thing that, for the foreseeable future, I think people should have a choice, just because you need to cater to their personal beliefs and fears and so on. But also in future, it's one thing that employee wants to work remotely. Another thing is whether he is equipped to work remotely, and whether that really fits his skill set. So either give them coaching to make this happen, or propose that, based on your skill set and experience today, maybe this isn't the best choice for you and your personality. So I think that needs to be also considered in each individual context.
Good point as well, Karolina. So as a little bit of a topic change here, I just want to again welcome everyone to the chat this morning, and just remind everyone who especially are on stage here today that we are recording this session, and it will be published on our iGaming Next socials after this as well. So if there is anything that you would like to not be part of that recording or publishing, just let me know after, and we'll make sure to edit that out.
Will it also be published in the Maltese newspapers as per usual?
That's up to be decided still. We have to see. But we'll slide into that in a little bit as well, Michael. But just to reiterate you as well, Michael, this is not investment advice, okay? That being said, I want to definitely slide into the topic of the greylisting today as well, as a little follow-up from last week. But before we do that, Nico, I know that you have been hard at work this week to gather all the most interesting news of the iGaming industry that has happened. So can you please share with us your findings?
Of course, and thanks for handing over to me as well. First of all, it's great seeing Robert on stage again, as we in Germany have a new era starting today by the 1st of July, with the new gambling treaty being in place as of today. And although we see a big earthquake coming around, people are still alive. So, Robert, it's good seeing you. It's good seeing you. So, starting up with some of the breaking news. What has happened in between the last couple of days? Betano, they landed the shirt sponsorship at Sporting Lisbon, while Betway lands the premium sponsorship at the German now second division team of Schalke 04, and they are replacing Bet at Home. And interesting news on Smarkets, we already touched on that they filled up their pockets with an pretty much undefined amount, but they are well seeded, obviously, and they are spending some of their money wisely on onboarding the Ladbrokes veteran and highly educated when it comes to politics trading as of Matthew Shaddick. So Matthew led the politics trading department for 18 years. And I'm pretty sure, Pierre, you have some insights about Matthew, as you are pretty close to him based on the podcast you already had. So do you want to start us up a little bit on your thoughts about this Smarkets?
Yeah, just a short comment here, I guess. I mean, Matthew Shaddick is an absolute legend of the industry. He was at Entain with Ladbrokes for the last 12 years as head of politics there, and he knows absolutely everything there is to know about every single little election, local election, and anything. And we did a podcast together the day before the US election. And now in hindsight, we know what happened, and of course, and how it all went down. But it was just such a fascinating podcast, because the election cycle was just so crazy, and how people placed bets during the Trump Biden election, where something like 80% of all the betting volume was put on Trump. So in other words, if Trump would have won the election, it would have not been that many smiles and fun games at Entain or any sportsbook operator the day after, since they would have lost a massive amount of money. That was the biggest betting event of the entire year, Matthew said. So yeah, just some short, funny little context there. But yeah, all the best wishes to Matthew at Smart.
So for sure, it's a legend just joining a pretty promising betting exchange as well. So that's obviously money wisely spent. So heading over to the MGA took actions against, I'm pretty sure they're a casino operator, the Magic Services, and they canceled their license because they did not pay the license fee, which was due in July 2020. Heading over to the US and Canada, it's 3 times Bally's. So the Gamesys shareholder approved the mega merger with Bally's, which is worth roughly around 2 billion euros, I guess. Then Bally's already announced a 15-year partnership with the WNBA Phoenix Mercury team to secure their access to the market in Arizona. And just remember when BetMGM entered the DC markets with a sponsorship of the Washington Nationals. So it seems like it's very, very important to actually enlarge your footstep in a place in the US by partnering up with some teams. You usually get an exclusive deal that you are the only operator to actually offer sports bet during a match of the team and around the premises of the team as well. And last but not least, according to Bally, Bally launched their mobile sports betting in Iowa as well. Then we're seeing some numbers. Mississippi handled roughly around 36 million wagers in May alone, while Tennessee took 160 million in sports wagers, which is topped by Colorado, handling $249 million in sports wagers. So the crazy numbers in the US, they continue. Continuing in the US, the sports properties operators speak out on Arizona's draft rules for the upcoming new regulation, which will start by the 9th of September. So we will see how these new draft rules will actually apply. And then another thing, for the famous C-280 bill in Canada, based on the single event sports betting, they already received their royal assent. So we are just waiting for this being put into law. But Canada is up on our milestone planning as well. Then again, US Sportradar, they closed a 10-year deal with the NHL. Remembering they already signed the NBA, and since 2015, they are the official stats provider for the NFL. So Sportradar, they signed up the big 3 in the US. And then another great news, the 4.5 billion resort of World Las Vegas hits the Strip. Just remember that Las Vegas fully opened its doors again just 3 weeks ago. So we will hopefully see the city coming back with full strength as well. On the M&A side, it has been quite quiet last week, and we just see bet makers acquiring the duo of Cruncher and Swap stakes for 10.8 million euros. So these assets include the racing results, which are offered by Cruncher, and the sports betting product offered by Swap stakes. So bet makers, they're significantly securing and pushing their footstep in the Australian horse racing market. And then heading over to the regulation, NetBet, they're entering the Greek market as well, as they secured licenses to enter the Greek market as well. Novibet, the home breed of Novibet, they entered the Greek gaming market first. And if we just remember, I think it has been 3 weeks ago when Playson secured their supplier license in Greece as well. Just remember, Betson and Golden Race already received their Greek licenses as well. So Greece will be a pretty interesting market for the sports betting operators as well. And that's from my end. Thanks.
Brilliant, Nico. Thanks for the fantastic update as per usual. So I want to start today. Well, we're already halfway in, but I want to continue today with going into an update on Malta and the situation here with the greylisting. So we discussed this last week here in the Clubhouse session, and it was literally the day after the announcement. A lot of uncertainty and not that much information that had come out at that point. And the consensus from the discussion here was that there was a lot of, let's say, fear what this would mean for the iGaming industry. And Mikael, you were not shy enough to say that you think that this could spell disaster and everyone should panic if you're based in Malta. So I want to start off by going over to you, Mikael. Now that kind of the dust has settled a little bit, what's your feeling now a week later on the greylisting of Malta?
Yeah, so the FATF, they have actually released now their reasons for the greylisting. So what we thought was that it was related to the blockchain island, passports being issued to let's say third countries outside of the EU, and obviously iGaming. But that's not the case. It's more traditional lack of source of wealth control, ultimate beneficial ownership checks, and tax avoidance checks, and intelligence related thereto. That has been like the three main reasons, and non-compliance on Malta's part that has rendered this result. And I would say that is actually both good and bad news. It's good news for the iGaming industry. So just to clarify a bit what you stated here, Pierre, I didn't say that everyone should panic. What I stated, hopefully stated at least as far as I remember, is that bigger players already have redundancy plans in terms of banking opportunities. But if you're a small player starting out in Malta with like one bank contact, so to speak, you should probably panic and try to get that redundancy as quickly as possible, because there's already prior to this, it was a tough sell to get a bank account at all if you were an licensed iGaming operator in Malta with a Maltese bank, which is a bit weird, but it has been that way for a couple of years, and I guess everyone on the panel is familiar with this. But for Malta as such, it's still a big problem, because this will of course it could potentially at least lead to de-risking from financial institutions and banks throughout the EU, meaning that they could cut their ties to Maltese financial institutions, which will have secondary effects on all Maltese companies. But I believe for bigger iGaming players, it shouldn't be that big a problem. But then to invest in, this is a big. When Malta actually becomes greylisted, it's still not. The formal decision is still not made. Just to make that clear, it's just a formality, but it's going to happen, I think, in August. And until that point, I don't think a lot of things will happen actually. And Malta will, of course, scramble its guns and try to solve these three issues. But I'm unsure if it's possible to do that in time to sort of avoid the greylisting. I think it's going to happen, but it will have a stronger effect on Malta as sort of a place to invest in and a place to move to. And it will probably have severe effects on Malta's attractiveness for hedge funds, where Malta has been significantly overperforming in relation to its size. And it will, of course, also have a big impact on Malta as a blockchain island. But short term, for Malta as an iGaming nation, I don't think it's as serious as I thought 1 week ago. Sorry for a long rant, but that's where we are.
Very good, Michael. Don't you miss the iGaming industry and operating an organization from Malta and all that comes with it when all these exciting things keeps happening in this industry?
Very much so, but I have a contractual obligation not to be active for another year. So at least not on the operator side. I could work for a supplier. So there's my calling card.
Brilliant. I'm marking the calendar as we speak for a follow-up chat in a year's time. Very good. Peter Paul, obviously we spoke about kind of potential regulatory challenges when it comes to applying for licenses in the Netherlands for Maltese listed of Maltese domiciled organizations last week. Have your thoughts kind of changed anything since last week? Is there anything more that you want to add to the discussion that we had the other week here on the grey listing of Malta?
Yeah, I still think that the effects of the grey listing of Malta will be fairly limited when it comes to any applications in the Netherlands from companies that are based out of Malta. Of course, it will be drawn into consideration by the KSA, but I really think that a grey listing of Malta, which happens to be the seat of your mother company or applying entity, is not enough reason to turn down an application. So there must be something else troubling going on for an application to be turned down. It will be drawn into consideration, I'm sure of that, but I don't think it will be a stumbling block, like I said last week. So, my opinion really hasn't changed, and I'm looking to see what Malta, as a country and member state, will do to get out of this grey listing as quickly as possible. I think they should look at what Iceland did when they were grey listed.
Yeah, actually, I met with the chief of staff of the Prime Minister yesterday to talk about exactly this. And what he said is that Malta is not just looking at how Iceland came out of the situation. What they are doing is they want to find other jurisdictions that have had similar reasons for why they ended up on the grey list and what they had to do in order to get back on the white list. So they are currently working with several other nations who have experience essentially on getting themselves out of this situation when they have been in a similar situation. Not sure exactly how much synergies there are between Malta and Iceland, but what I do know is that they are working with several jurisdictions on that front. Yeah. And also yeah, go ahead, Peter Paul.
No, I was going to make a poor joke, which is they're both islands, but I think that's where the comparison stops.
Yeah, that's pretty much it. Yeah. Also, the fact that Iceland is 100 times bigger than Malta, but yeah, in any case.
Pierre, what was going on with this Maltese newspaper quoting you? You have to tell us the story.
Yeah, so that's a story in its own right? It just goes to show, the tribalism and polarization that its island tends to show sometimes, because somehow, through kind of operating this platform of iGaming Next and moderating and hosting podcasts and stuff like that, I guess that they see me as a bit of a representative of the iGaming industry. And so what the opposition newspaper did last week was to just essentially make up a news story. It's the first time it happens to me, I guess, but basically claiming that I personally had attacked the Labour government, and I had said that the Labour government, the mistakes of the last couple of years have led to the grey listing of Malta, which is just obviously not something that I don't even know the Maltese politics, what has led to this. But yeah, it basically led to this news article. But the good thing that came out of this is the fact that, both sides of the aisle of the politics in Malta, both the nationalist and the Labour government, both the left and the right, they realized that this was obviously a bit of a screw up. and they realized that they need to be closer to the iGaming industry. So that's why I was called to have a meeting with the chief of staff yesterday in order to strike up a closer communication with government, and also meeting the opposition party on Friday via Zoom to essentially hear what they have to say and how they see this situation playing out. So yeah, caught in the crosshairs, you could say, for a brief 15 minutes there, but it all got resolved at the end, essentially. But with that, like I said, it came some pretty interesting insights from the OPM yesterday, in the fact that, again, that Malta is looking at working with other jurisdictions that have been greylisted by the FATF in order to figure out what is the best course of action. He also was quite transparent and said that, we don't know how long this is going to take. Could it be a year? Yes. Could it be longer? Yes, that's possible as well. And they also actually lifted up the fact that the harsh due diligence and AML checks that happening within the industry is actually something positive for Malta. That the fact that the iGaming industry is based here is actually something good for the island in this instance, because obviously the industry, as we all know, is heavily scrutinized, and the due diligence that we have on our organizations are very strict. So that is the shining example of Malta here. So he was adamant to again reiterate that this has nothing to do with the iGaming industry, and they very much want to make sure that the industry this doesn't trigger some form of exodus from the island. But again, also due to this a closing thought here, it's very difficult for especially the major organizations in Malta to move anywhere in the near term. It's very difficult to do knee-jerk reactions for if you are Betsson, for example, or Kindred and others, since you are so rooted in Malta with everything that comes with it, all the employees. There's a great ecosystem of suppliers here in Malta, of course, that are supplementing the industry, and so the ministry, they weren't that, let's say, worried that there will be any major shifts, at least not in the near term. But they all agree that if Malta stay on the grey list, let's say for years to come, that's when we'll see more dramatic changes negatively to the island. So it's absolutely top priority for the Maltese government to work themselves back into a whitelisted status. So that was the consensus there.
Is anything happening to the real estate market?
No, but I'll share with you something interesting in that respect. So one of my best friends is currently undergoing a process to buy a house, and he hadn't signed the agreement yet. When the news came out, he was supposed to sign 2 days later. And what happened? He said immediately that we need to put this on pause. I don't know what's going to happen with this greylisting, and he wanted to see how this all played out. Now, I think the dust has settled a little bit now, and like you mentioned, Mikael, we know the reasons. We know a little bit more details, at least. And since then, it's been like everything has been as normal here. The birds are chirping in the morning. The construction noise is what it is, and everyone is going about their life again. And yes, my friend he signed the agreement today, and he feels that it's not going to affect him or the prices of the house that much. There's been some discussions as well in general, but I guess we are still a bit early. But the consensus is that in the next coming year, nothing much will change. That is where the discussion have gone from all points, from all directions. But again, if nothing happens within a year or 2 years, then we might see falling prices and difficulty to attract foreign investment, difficulty to attract new organizations. And if we don't attract foreign investment, who is going to fill up the nice Michelin star restaurants, and who is going to buy the more expensive properties? So So yes, nothing as of now, but you might see changes in the future as we go along later. Rory, you had a really interesting podcast, your very first episode, which was fantastic, by the way, with Enrico Bradamante, who is the chairperson of iGaming, who is basically representing, I think, something like 27 major iGaming organizations. Most of them are based in Malta. And it's been his top priority over the last 18 months or so to deal with this potential greylisting and kind of act as a bridge between the government and the iGaming industry. So what did you learn from that interview, Rory?
Yeah, no, it was. Thank you for that. It was my first one, so all nerves are still there, which still apply. So it was good. But no, I thought it was a fascinating insight into, I suppose, how I think Enrico's been lobbying for quite a while now, for a number of months on this, and I think he's been working very closely with his members on the impact of this. He didn't seem to, a lot of the operators and companies based out of Malta were obviously already aware of this, so I don't think it's also going to be a mass exodus of companies leaving the nest. But I think I put the question to him about when did he think it would come back, would Malta would get back to whitelisting, and I think it's hard to say, but given the way things are going, hopefully it'll be about 6 to 12 months to get it back on course and hopefully action back onto the whitelist. But I got the impression he's working very closely with the government to make sure that the iGaming voice is heard and that things could be moving in the right direction. So it was a fascinating insight into how the iGaming world is dealing with FATF regulations. I appreciate a lot of them knew was happening, but it's still quite a shock when it does happen. But a lot of them were prepared for it to come.
Brilliant, thank you, Rory. I recommend people who have 20 minutes of their time to check out this interview. You can go on YouTube, just go iGaming Next, Enrico Bradamante and Rory Credland, and you'll see, or just go on our YouTube channel and you'll see.
I think just to final input there, I think what he did say at the end was that we both, I agree with him what he says. He sees this the industry coming back stronger as a result of this. It's one of those things where these things that try and knock you down, you come back a lot stronger, and I think we'll see that in the case with Malta. I think Malta will come back stronger and more attractive, possibly even in that sense, when they do finally get whitelisted again.
Yeah, so there's kind of a positive twist on it at the end. It's also worth noting, if you look at it from the listed company's point of view, how did the market react to this? How did the retail and institutional investors react to this news? And I thought that was quite interesting in its own right, because Evolution shares, for example, which are the biggest iGaming company in the world these days, their shares fell something like 8% on Monday on the news. And I was following, I don't know, Mikael, if you follow the discussions within the retail segment on like Dagens Industri and the Placera, the forums and stuff. But there was a bit of a panic actually on this news. And the discussions were very much around like, how can Evolution move from Malta? Same with Kindred, if you checked out the Kindred forums. Kindred has a very strong ESG angle. And so the investors were questioning, how does being domiciled in Malta, being a greylisted financial nation, go hand in hand with Kindred's ESG push, for example? And it's a valid question, and at some point they will need to answer those questions, And so the result of Monday's reaction from the markets were that Evolution lost €2.5 billion from their market cap. And that is not to be forgotten or to just be brushed under the carpet. That is a big shift based on this news. Same with Kindred as well. They lost something like 8% of their market cap as well. So I thought that was interesting as well. I don't know, Mikael, do you follow the discussions around the retail segment and what's going on that front?
Yes. So I think that the reaction would have been sound if it came like a week earlier. So this is quite interesting. It was very delayed, very much related to this being reported in mainstream media, so to speak, and possibly used as an excuse for some people to just bring home their profits, to be completely honest. I see some issues with the multiple in Evolution Gaming, for example, being very, very high, very aggressive. But that's more a general sort of how should you value the company as such. But if you have reactions like this to indeed serious news to Malta, but perhaps not having a big effect on Evolution specifically. I mean, that was really weird because Evolution has perhaps the least impact of this of all companies, so to speak. Drives me to the conclusion that perhaps these companies are not perfect to have on sort of major stock exchanges with a lot of retail reaction. But that's more on a general sort of philosophical level more than anything else, because these companies will always be subject to ESG considerations and also regulation moving back and forth for the next at least 10 years. So that's just a thought I had watching.
Mikael, you have to mention your disclaimer very quick here.
None of this is investment of advice, of course.
Brilliant, Mikael. Thank you. Yeah, interesting. I mean, it seems like this is pure stock market psychology at the end of the day. There's some news, people panic for no real reason because they think others will panic, and it kind of triggers this this group reaction on news that shouldn't potentially affect them that much.
Talk about investment. Did anyone see the internet code go for $5 million yesterday? Yesterday or the day before? The NFT. You see that news?
I can't hear you that well, Rory. What was that?
Sorry. The original code for the internet was sold for $5 million as an NFT the other day. That's always interesting.
There we go. The NFT hype is not slowing down, in other words.
No, I just want to add, I've been trailing to see what the fallout was in the, let's say, the industry press internationally. And I must say, I was somewhat surprised to see how slowly it was took up by the bigger newsletters and stuff. So, it made it to the headlines, but, only as the 6th or 7th point. So, in the international industry press, it seemed to be, not breaking news.
Well, that's why you have iGaming Next. We'll make sure that we don't forget this.
Exactly.
Brilliant. Is there anything else to add? I'm aware of the time here. Is there anyone on the panel who would like to chime in as well on the Malta situation? Bogdan, I know that you're always super keen on sharing your.
Yeah, well, I've been listening carefully to this, and the only conclusion which I have, and this going back, you can say 20 years ago and 10 years ago, I would love for the Maltese banking system and for the officials and also for the government to actually consider a different approach and make it easier for the companies, especially the ones who are investing a lot of money, effort, and bringing up the people and improving the Maltese economy to actually finally solve the banking system problems, which has been for so many years. I mean, you can get really, really tired, and you are bringing your stuff there. You are establishing business. You are paying taxes. You are improving the economy, and still you have these stones on the road all the time. And I am very much surprised that nothing like that happens actually. Like nobody see that this is a big problem. And as another remark, just to relating a little bit to the NFTs, there has been some other maybe not directly related news, but they are related. I've just read the info the other day that Crypto.com has become the newest global partner of Formula One for the next 5 years. And it's rumored that the deal is worth $100 million. So knowing what Crypto.com is doing and also how active they are on the NFT, we are about to see a lot of this kind of activities, a lot of NFTs related to the sport and to, let's call it the sexy motorsports as well. So more to come, Peter Paul.
Yeah, interesting. It seems that Formula One is the target of the crypto space. There was another smaller crypto project that is, I think it's called a Hyper or something. Hyper. They're trying to kind of go head to head with Ethereum. They also are sponsoring one of the drivers. So it seems the Formula One is the correct target group for the crypto space. But yeah, massive deal, 100 million euro.
Yeah, but that's the rumor, so it's nothing 100% confirmed, but it's coming from the good sources. So I tend to believe, knowing the impact and the worth of F1 brand, it might make sense. But what I see, it is just another confirmation that crypto and the blockchain is getting in the right direction, and using such a powerful partner as Formula One, especially on so long season ahead of British Grand Prix, where we will be witnessing the first race. I mean, the qualifying will be this 30-minute session, which, honestly speaking, from my perspective, because I'm a big Formula One fan, is a stupid thing, because I much more enjoy, and a lot of people much more enjoy the normal qualifying session. But we'll see how that go. So, but nevertheless, they are becoming the sponsor, and there will be the big exposition and the big noise. So cryptocurrencies are here to stay for a long, long time.
For sure. And on that note, to solidify this, the other day, there was the record sale of a CryptoPunk, which is these NFTs. It's a collection of NFTs. And one CryptoPunk, aka one pixelated avatar, was sold for more than $10 million. So in other words, if Formula One wants to, if they would want to make a barter deal, they could also just ask for 10 CryptoPunks instead of the 100 million, and they could have fun with those. But that being said, I want to start running off a little bit today, and just a final question I have for Robert as well. The new regulation came into effect of Germany today. How does that feel?
The question is really good, because I thought about it today as well. I visited some sites today, and I started out 2001 in Vienna at Bet and Win, and the founders, Norbert and Manfred, they basically said, we want to bring down the last monopoly in Germany and Europe. That's sort of what was their mission, essentially. And today's the day, and it's weird psychologically, really. I have to say, I'm surprised by it. I open up Tipico, I open up Bwin, and very few games, of course, and it just feels differently. And I just can't imagine how it would feel for an audience, the population, to like. Obviously, they won't know that it's today the day. It will take weeks and months until they really realize it's all legal and fine and dandy. But I think that will play an effect. And obviously, it's just today. It's been 11 hours since we're legal, like fully legal, or I don't know, very legal. I don't know how to call this anymore. Gray, white. I'm confused. But it would be good to discuss next week, because then we have a week of data, a week of news. And more conclusions. So it would be good to discuss next week in Clubhouse.
Absolutely. Let's take note of that, Karolina and Nico, and we'll definitely bring up the German regulation next week and see what we have learned after the first week. So with that, let's start rounding off a little bit. Nico, Karolina, it's been a great session today, like always. Karolina, do you want to summarize a little bit, and then followed by Nico? Oh, or perhaps Nico, what did you make of the discussion today? Anything interesting to draw from it? Oh my God, I'm deserted by my dear co-moderators.
I'm here.
There we
Sorry,
go, Karolina.
I just walked away from my phone, so couldn't unlock the microphone. No, super interesting session. I don't have the expertise of some of the guys here on the German regulation. I know it's tricky for many, and I think yesterday I was on a call with. We have this CEO call with a couple of really impressive ladies organized by SVC, and there was a lot of talk about Canadian regulation and similar sort of. Doubts from many companies on how this is going to unfold and how to talk to regulators directly. And I think the topic that would be interesting to chat about next week is the regulator friendliness towards having direct conversations with industry players, because it varies from market by market and it varies between different operators. Because, for example, Paris from Pinnacle was saying she can never reach any regulator in Sweden to discuss any of their sort of ongoing matters, whereas other companies were saying they have the same issue with UK, and it seemed to be very different for different companies. I think it's an interesting subject to touch on for myself, for sure, because with trying to build an innovative business that isn't really regulated or defined, I think direct conversations early on with regulators to ensure compliance would be helpful, but I have no idea how to approach it. So it's a subject definitely interesting from my perspective.
For sure, Karolina. Let's take note of that and remember that for next week as well. Absolutely. Nico, any last thoughts on your end? Any closing thoughts?
Yeah, so just one hint from the German regulation. So it has been mandatory to actually include the API of the Oasis, which is the player protection database, to all the retail shops. So that caused a lot of all-nighters within the last 2 weeks. I know from a friend of mine, she had not been sleeping for the last 7 days, resulting in the regulator postponed the mandatory Oasis integration to 1st of August. So it was worth spending and worth seeing what you're actually capable of. But as Robert already stated, we will see what actually happens within the next 7 days. As a matter of fact, pretty much all the regulated companies are already fulfilling all the regulatory requirements. So I don't think that we will see a lot of change, but we will see especially what kind of walkarounds and workarounds our industry will reply to the literally kind of blurry stated tax regime, which is up for debate pretty much. But as said already last week, it never gets boring, it never gets uninteresting with our industry. So it's great seeing a lot of minds and how they actually really react to force change the external factor. But I'm thrilled to discuss this next week.
Awesome. And just as a final little point here, tomorrow we have our iGaming Next Power Hour, our digital event that we host every month. And we're actually going to discuss both Canada and Germany tomorrow in the Power Hour, together with also Todd Hasalter and Guy Kawasaki, which I'm super excited for. So make sure to check that out if you want to have a bit more of a deep dive into the world of iGaming regulation, the most exciting thing I can think about. So yeah, with that said, guys, it's been great today. You've all been wonderful. Thanks for sharing your opinions. Thanks for being open. Again, as a final statement, this session has been recorded. Let's see if it makes it to Maltese media this week again. If not, let me know if there's anything that should be edited out, and we'll make sure to do that, of course. With that being said, thank you, everyone, and have a wonderful Thursday afternoon. Mikael, I'm coming to the rain. I'm coming to Sweden.
Welcome.
Leaving the 40-degree heat, and maybe we can grab a coffee or something. Who knows?
Great. I'll be in town.
Fantastic. All right. Thank you, everyone, and have a great afternoon.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Thank
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Safe travels, Pierre.
Bye.